Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of the Nerdcast. I am Devin, joined as always by Justin and Kelly over at the inn, and we have a special guest joining us today, Wray Crawford. We're going to be talking about, this is something that Justin has been kind of harping on throughout the years as something he's been wanting to do, and now that we have Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker set to hit theaters in the next week on, I believe, December 20th, we're going to have ourselves a retrospective of the Star Wars series in total. So we're going to talk about all three trilogies, well, what we can of the third at least, in addition to all the supplemental materials that have come out in between. And we're going to gauge basically our feelings, our response towards the series as a whole. Now, initially I wasn't going to be a part of this panel because I say time and time again on the show that, I like Star Wars. I'm not a super fan, but you're a huge super fan. I know Kelly's a super fan. Ray, are you a super fan?
I'm a lukewarm, pretty hot super fan.
You're lukewarm, pretty hot. Wait,
yeah.
So like
right in between there. I'm
okay.
I'm a 85% of the films and all the.
Then I feel like
series.
I'm right in that middle between those two, maybe then too, because I definitely know I'm not quite as big as Justin.
So Justin runs hot.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm a little
cool.
under.
Well, you know what? To start this off, why don't I just go down the list here? You could talk about how you were first introduced to Star Wars. Talk about your favorite film of the series, and your favorite moment, your most memorable Star Wars moment. And then we'll just go into the first section here. Justin.
I was born in '77 in June, so right after Star Wars debuted. I think Star Wars was the first movie that my mom saw after she gave birth to me.
Oh wow!
So yeah, they they got a babysitter. I was still like a month old, and then they went and saw Star Wars. It's always been ubiquitous. Like some of my first pictures are me. My second birthday was an R2-D2 birthday. My
R2-D2 birthday.
Yeah, I had the cake was R2-D2.
Oh,
nice. That was the theme, R2-D2.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And my sixth birthday was a Return of the Jedi birthday, and I was Boba Fett at least probably three times for Halloween in between. I had all the figurines. I had the Vader case until it was stolen by some kids on the street. Todd and Wendy, I know you did it. I know you were out there. I have not forgotten. Anyway, and I had I had an AT-AT, I had all the toys, a TIE Fighter, and I still got all the toys. And I was ready for those prequels when I was there. I didn't camp out or anything, but when the first week the Phantom Menace was open, I went and saw it, and I was a little confused. That was the first taste of wait a minute. I like it because I like Star Wars, but I don't.
So what is your earliest Star Wars memory? When you think of your first Star Wars memory, what pops to mind?
I don't. It's hard to explain. I don't have a first Star Wars memory. All my memories.
They all just kind of converge. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's literally. I mean, my second birthday was an R2-D2 birthday. Star Wars has always been it's always been there. I don't
Can't remember a time without it.
Yeah, or a time when I didn't like it.
Okay.
I didn't know about it yet, or just discovered it. It was
That's a dyed-in-the-wool fan.
Yeah.
So then what is your favorite then?
Empire.
All right, that's pretty much most Star Wars superfans' favorite, I feel.
I would say Empire, followed by New Hope, and then probably Jedi and Force Awakens.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They kind of wrangle for...
Cool. Ray?
See, a lot of my experience is just like yours as far as, my favorite is Empire by far, but that was also the first one that I saw. So, it was kind of I think it's seared in as, my first Empire experience was seeing that film. And probably my first memory of, really falling in love with it was when I was around the toys. Because I had, all the toys. I mean, getting Millennium Falcon, my birthday was, the end-all, be-all.
You got the Millennium Falcon.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
I was that guy.
My parents couldn't afford it. I got a little Millennium Falcon, which I still have in my studio, but it was
it's the small one. It wasn't the big one.
See, I think that's all that I got that birthday was just that Millennium Falcon. And that was this is going to be this birthday and next birthday. That's your present.
Sure.
But my favorite thing was the Dagobah system, the toy kit with that.
Oh, you had that?
It had the little levers, where
I
you could
Hoth.
make.
I had the Hoth playset.
Yeah. See, it had the little levers where you could, make the rocks, levitate up and that stuff. And I think that's probably my first, really good memory was being able to replicate the stuff in the film that I saw, and being able to, just kind of create my own empire. When I was
That's
playing.
awesome.
It was a lot of fun. But Empire definitely is my favorite one, and I actually probably my next favorite would be Rogue One. I mean, I love the where that one kind of took us. As far as the getting the plans. What kind of becomes a central theme in all of this is the good and the bad. So
did you ever dive into the expanded universe stuff?
I didn't. I focused a lot. I mean, of course, on all the films. I was right there for the prequels, and I was the guy that was camping out, and I did see it. And then I never camped out again. I was like, what a waste of time.
Did you know when you first saw it that you didn't like it?
I did. It was from the first.
I couldn't admit it to myself at first. I knew there were things about it I didn't like, but I wasn't ready to be like, this is not a good movie. This was a failure. And
I tried fooling myself for a while.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to the prequels in a second. Yeah. That's the hot button issue that seems completely unavoidable, but it's specifically going to be a very, very thoroughly talked about part of this discussion.
Right.
Kelly?
Born in June of '82, so I was pretty much alive for the entire trilogy. So, but my brother was a little older. He had the toys. That's the thing, you talk about the earliest memory. I just remember maybe just watching the VHS tapes a few years later.
Yeah.
I remember us on nights either it was a weekend or maybe it was in school, but we're going to watch all three of them. We'd start A New Hope. We'd get through the first one, we'd be passed out. We always had this dream of as little 5 and 6 year olds watching all of them, and it would never happen. But my other cool thing I loved, one of memory outside of just watching them, the lightsabers as a kid didn't light up. Everyone that grew up in the prequel age got the little battery ones. So, but for some reason, the handle part twisted off.
Yeah.
We actually grabbed small flashlights and taped them on with duct tape, and so they actually lit up.
Well,
and those things kind of they kind of had wholes in them, so they went woo woo. So that was the creative part we did. But
you see that you're a true Jedi. You made your own.
I know. I was about to say
just no kyber crystal needed.
One of the coolest toys for Return of the Jedi was actually a blaster. The Han Solo blaster. My brother and I had the Han Solo blasters, and they made the sound when you pulled the trigger. And they were great. I mean, I was just it was. I had lots of other toys. I had the exploding speeder from Jedi and all that stuff. But man, those blasters, we got them for Christmas, and we just wore them out. And we moved, and we still played, and we played with them. Because we wouldn't just play Star Wars with them. They were our go-to gun for guns. Kids in the 80s played guns. That was the name of the game.
It wasn't guns. It wasn't guns. It was war. For me, it was war.
For us, it was just called guns.
I think just for nostalgia, I have to go with A New Hope, which as a little kid, I remember my VHS tape only just being called Star Wars. I never even started calling them really A New Hope until I think the re-releases when everyone really started calling them when they did the special editions. But A New Hope, just because I have a weird thing about my favorite movies are I have a hard time at slipping new things into my favorites. If I were to tell you my top 10, so that's just why it's such a hard thing. But Empire's in probably my top 10 or 12 too.
Yeah.
But I think it's just nostalgia of just happy feeling of watching New Hope.
Okay.
Cool. But I actually will acknowledge that Empire's a better movie. But I can still say it as a favorite in a way. I have
That's fair. That's fair. So when I was thinking about my earliest memory, and it makes perfect sense. My earliest memory period is playing the Atari with my dad. So it makes perfect sense that I went down the track of getting into video games and all of this. My earliest Star Wars memory is actually playing the arcade game at the youth center on the military base I grew up on. And it was the Vector game where you had to fly in the trench of the Death Star and whatnot. And to me, that was just the coolest shit in the world.
Because it worked.
It worked
so well.
Awesome.
You had the little foils, your lasers on either side of the screen, and it was coming in. I was like, dude, this is pretty much just like the movie.
Because the targeting computer on the film also had that Vector look. So it was like a one-to-one sort of relation there. So. And as a product of the 80s, I'm also June of '82, along with Kelly. the thing for a lot of kids in my age range was jet fighters. So for like lightsaber duels and all that was cool, but really what really stuck me with Star Wars was the X-wings and like being able to fly around, you know, acting like Top Gun. Like I used to pretend I was in Top Gun or Iron Eagle or Backcross
Oh, we
or
love
Robotech
Top Gun too.
all of that. So like so my earliest, I guess, Star Wars memory would be that arcade game. I don't remember really the first time I watched A New Hope, but I know that is the first one that I watched. There were only two scenes in that movie that I guess maybe borderline traumatized me, and they were both the scene where they fall into the trash compactor. Because first it was all the liquid and all the garbage, and I thought as a kid that's disgusting. Like it was just really gross, and there was like a creature in there, and I was like, it just really set badly with me. And then the walls started to close in, and as a kid that was actually super scary to me. You know, I was like, oh my God, they're going to get crushed.
The walls closing in was a particularly, I don't know, when I saw that for the first time, I don't actually know when it was, but I remember it always, even now when I watch it, there's that sense of like, you guys are screwed. You know what I mean? I know they're going to get out of there, but
exactly.
like, you know. And then that scene too, when 3PO is hearing them and they're really happy, but they're coming through the thing, and they actually sound terrible. Yeah. And he's like, they're dying, and it's like,
the way that was filmed, you know, was so well also, you know, from seeing the wall come past, and you're like, you know, oh shit, you know, it's
because it actually comes past the camera.
You're like, it's done. They're dead. You know?
Yeah, and I still don't know how, because that was all like metal and stuff, and they're all like, I mean, they would have been crushed by all the debris in there, you know, theoretically. But
so let's talk about the original trilogy then. Let's talk about A New Hope. So Kelly, it's your favorite movie. So just what is it about that movie that really sits well with you? Like, what do you like the most about it?
It's just the way it just starts out with a bang, like just the pan down and then just starts with the fight. And
so the movie did a lot of really interesting things, filmmaking wise, just as far as how it used models and how it really revolutionized special effects in films. And even when I go back and watch it now, I'm still amazed at how good a lot of that stuff looks. Like there were a lot of pretenders that came out as a result of the success of Star Wars, where if you go back and try to watch those movies, like the effects are brutal, very brutal. So like that actually, like that's a good point. Like the way that movie started off, that it really kind of set the template. But so what else set well with you with that?
Music. I mean, we can just keep going on about John Williams' score and everything, but it was just fun. And the dogfighting at the end, the attack on the Death Star, it's just, the effects are great. It was just, you never saw anything really like that. I mean, that's the thing. I never remembered my first view, and it was just always kind of there. So it just kind of, you know, I don't remember that first. It'd be kind of cool to have that first experience, but I just don't remember that.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I remember about, and it's not about it is about New Hope, but it didn't come out until Force Awakens. And Kevin Smith did a kind of his review on Smodcast of, you know, my first impressions of Force Awakens. And he put this thing in perspective, I think for all of us, it's a story of a man and his robot and his droid. You know, it's a boy and his droid. It's the same thing really as, you know, the old movies of the 60s, Old Yeller Night, you know, it's a boy and his dog, you know, and it's, I think that for me is what made A New Hope so iconic for me, was that story of, you know, just a boy like me, a kid that I can relate to, and this, you know, simple thing that just propels his life into this, you know, big grand scheme, you know, and everything. And that's always stuck with me when I heard Kevin Smith talk about that. I'm like, holy shit, that's what it really is with A New Hope, is, you know, this introduction of, you know, knowing where this kid's going to end up, but it all starts with him meeting these droids, you know, and that's one of the things that's just always stuck with me. Ever since Kevin Smith said that, I've just been like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I can see that for certain too. I think whenever I first watched A New Hope, like it's so weird. As a kid, it's really like there were a lot of things that I didn't quite know how to take in, that I didn't have an appreciation for until I saw it way later on. So like I was just confused naturally by, the political machinations of the Star Wars universe. I didn't know what the fucking Grand Moff was. I didn't know anything about
You don't really need to though.
And you don't.
That's
That's the thing. Like I was able to enjoy it without.
Bad guy too.
Yeah, I
mean,
just
it's
knew.
like-
I knew they were all bad guys. I didn't need to know like what the chain of command was
Yeah.
or how their rankings. But. Like I did grow an appreciation for what was there later on in life, but as a kid, it was just my first exposure to the idea of a rebellion, of there's this oppressive system that a bunch of scrappy upstarts band together and then fight against and then eventually win, right? And like the idea of that was pretty new to me at that time as just a kid. And I don't know if I can say that I related to it, but I could definitely say that I was intrigued by it. Like that the foundation of that story has pretty much become a template for so many other different aspects of storytelling for similar types of I guess rebellion narratives that I've been huge fans of throughout the years, particularly in like role-playing games that I've played. Like it's always about a scrappy band of rebels that come together and overthrow an evil empire of some sort, whether it's Final Fantasy or Suikoden or anything like that. Like it all like if I distill it all down to its base form, it's all just a retelling of A New Hope in some certain way, shape, or form, which in and of itself is probably a retelling of
Lord of the Rings or the story of Sigurd the Volsung from the Ring Cycle, the Nordic Ring Cycle.
It takes a classic, trope of storytelling and just does it in an extremely well and extremely new fashion.
Dude, when he lights up that lightsaber in Obi-Wan's hut, I was just like, that I was just like, what? Yes.
I do remember
a glowing sword. I didn't think this could get much cooler, but it's just like, this is like Excalibur, only way more awesome.
It's so funny that you bring up that because I remember after that, elegant never entered my vocabulary until that movie, and I remember using that like after an elegant weapon for that line. I would
elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about that is like I remember there was one thing about that scene that always kind of like he just very casually mentions the Clone Wars, and I was like, what?
When I was a kid, the funny thing was I didn't know what a clone was.
Me either.
But I thought that word sounded awesome,
Yeah.
and the Clone Wars sounded like a spacey sci-fi war that would happen in there.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, I don't know what the Clone Wars were, but they sound awesome.
Yeah, I was more intrigued by that than like the lightsaber. I was clone. I was like, well, I mean, hyperbole.
Yeah, sure.
I have a penchant for hyperbole here, but no. But I remember as a kid, he goes Clone Wars, and I was like, Clone Wars. And I was like, what is that? And like that was
buried the lead there.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to your dad, you're old. What was the Clone Wars like?
And like the thing about just him dropping Clone Wars is I don't know the context of that either. But, I know what a war is.
Yeah.
And I have a vague idea of what a clone might be. But all I need to know is the war part, though.
Yeah.
Like, there's some kind of war that happened.
So that's a good scene, though. The way he asked him, you fought in the Clone Wars? Like,
Yeah.
he immediately knew what he was talking
Yeah,
about.
like-
He was interested. And
there
as the
wasn't like
audience
an
is
explanation.
He fought in the Clone Wars.
fought
I don't
in the
know what it
Clone
is, but
Wars.
I'm in. Tell me, Obi-Wan. Tell me about the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Were they using that? Because a couple minutes ago, they were all using guns.
Yeah, and it's like,
What the hell?
that war sounded way more awesome, and the previous war was really awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, it's so good. It's lightning in a bottle.
So in 1997, George Lucas, what I was saying is one of the things I really appreciate about him as an artist is that most artists that I've known, and I've almost kind of sort of considered myself to be something close to approaching an aspiring artist. Whenever I do writing or if I attempt to do any illustrations, one of the things that I appreciate about the craft and craftsman is that the sense of perfection, being a perfectionist, means that they're never done with whatever they're working on. There is no end state. Like there's always something that you feel you can do to improve on something that you put out in the world. And I feel like George Lucas feels much the same way about.
You think?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty obvious he feels much the same way. Like there's always something that he could do to improve upon on, his masterpiece.
Greedo just needs to say something.
He just needs to. Just have one thing.
I don't know, I'm missing something.
Those special editions came out in '97, and I know, Kelly, you have a lot of pretty strong opinions on these. So, what do you think about? Do you think obviously there are changes he made that most people would say are positive, most people would say are negative. Do you think it balances out which way more, one or the other?
Well, we were talking earlier about like the effects, how groundbreaking it was and all. And I think now with the effects we see these days with the digital, with the CGI ones, it doesn't almost feel as special as looking at the cool stuff they did with the models about moving the camera around the models from like the fighting and the it just looks like every other CGI thing we've had. Kind of like no one ever touched what he did in '77.
Yeah.
But as a 15, I was 15 when those came out. The chance to get to see those in the theater, that was the most mind-blowing, exciting thing.
For that, it was cool.
Yeah, because like I said, I was born pretty much right when Jedi came out.
Right.
I never had this experience. So getting to do that, I remember they came out like 3 weeks apart. I even got like the poster that did all three of them. My brother worked at a theater that we had 2 theaters in my town. One company got A New Hope and Jedi. His theater got Empire, so I got to watch Empire like the night before with him.
Oh, nice.
But so that was kind of fun. But yeah, it's just they were back then. All the special stuff actually didn't bug me. I thought it was like, I guess at that age I was like, oh, it's cool. But I guess it was like kind of got later on.
So in A New Hope, they added the scene with Jabba.
Yeah,
a bunch of stuff in Mos Eisley that looks.
Yeah, Mos Eisley's where most of it is.
Yeah.
And the rings on both of the things blowing up from
on the Death Star. Which
yeah,
I
Death
thought
Star
was
and the Alderaan.
I think that's a cool addition.
Yeah, because it has this.
I like how
the
they
sound
add a
goes
little
with
low in.
it.
Yeah, because as it passes the camera, it goes.
Yeah, I used to put it on my dad's sound system,
Yeah.
and we'd actually see it track to like to the left speaker.
So that's actually a really cool addition. I like that. And the Jabba thing.
No, terrible.
Yeah.
And then we're not bringing up the biggest change that we just don't.
I feel like that's been talked about at length. But if you got opinions on it,
It's just the movement. The neck movement was.
so obviously we're talking
Like
about Han shot first. So
I used to say he's the only one that shot. It's not even the shot
Han
first.
shot
yeah,
first.
yeah.
But if he's the only one that shot, he shot first.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's still technical. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Han shoots and kills Greedo.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the way it should be. That's the way it was. There was no reason to change it.
He changed it because he didn't want Han Solo to appear to be a cold-blooded killer. So he wanted to have
Cold-blooded.
He wanted to give him a reason to be like, okay, it was self-defense. It wasn't like maybe at the time that he initially conceived Star Wars, it was just like a gritty Wild West in space. But as it blew up into something that kids all over the world idolized, he thought, it's not cool that this character that these kids, love, straight up executes this guy, based on the assumption that maybe he's going to do the same to me. So he goes in and he makes the change to where Han, kills Greedo in self-defense. Personally, I don't give a shit. Like, I really don't care. The end result is the same as Greedo's dead.
Just
like,
looks weird though.
It looks weird.
Because like Greedo misses him by a full foot and he's sitting like 3 feet away from
that,
him.
and it's like he goes like.
Yeah, the neck
his head.
thing, yeah.
It doesn't work.
If you look, his neck breaks in
Yeah,
a really unnatural
It doesn't
way.
work.
I got a more interesting take on that because for me, I think that the change that he made there for Han kind of
As a character?
kind of precluded the campy shit that he was going to bring in the prequels.
Oh, totally.
With Jar Jar Binks and all that stuff, he didn't want Han to be this, outlaw murderer and that, and he kind of toned down that aspect of it, and I think that's what kind of let us know that the prequels.
So it was a precursor.
It was a
precursor
harbinger to some of the choices he was making in the prequels. And
the thing is that Han comes around, right? I mean, it's like that's the whole thing. Yeah, it's like he comes around through and he's supposed to be rough and tumble.
It was a
badass.
perfect
That's the whole
introduction
point.
to me.
It was amazing.
Well, I mean, okay, so it doesn't take away from his rough and tumble character if he shot in self-defense versus not shooting in self-defense. So I don't know if like we could talk about whether the visual fidelity of him twisting his neck and whatnot looks good or not. I think we all agree it looked terrible.
Well, I don't think there's anyone in the world that would think it doesn't look terrible.
Right,
And the
but-
thing is, it's not worth the trade-off.
No,
To me.
to you it's not. And again, this is from a perspective of George Lucas. Like this this is something he put out into the world that he feels is giving a bad message to kids, right? Because it's kids who are the primary consumer of, or at least it was at the time, maybe it's a little bit opposite now, I don't know, but it was children who were the primary consumer of Star Wars. He did not want that message to be displayed. Like he probably could have cut that entire scene altogether, honestly. Like, there's really no reason. If it went from, Luke and Obi-Wan leave and then cut and then all of the Greedo stuff is gone.
Well, here's an interesting point of view for that. Originally, that Greedo scene wasn't in the movie. The scene that was in the movie is Jabba, the scene they put back in the movie.
Where he's in the,
And that's what lets you know, because Greedo is there with them. That's what lets you know that, he's got a price on his head that gives him his kind of motivation to get his money and get out, and it's kind of setting up his character. Well, they decided to cut that scene, and they added the Greedo scene to let you know the same thing. They still wanted to communicate that information. So,
and it's an interesting thing from, I guess, a storytelling point of view. I like Greedo disseminating that information more than Jabba, because it keeps Jabba mysterious.
Sure.
It keeps the whole thing mysterious, and it makes it adds that much more, an extra layer of danger to it. Like, wow, this Jabba guy has hired guns that are willing to travel to Tatooine to confront this dude in a shootout if need be. It adds that layer of grit to the world, right? So in that instance, I actually like the inclusion of the Greedo scene way more than the Jabba scene, just from a storytelling perspective. But if the idea is to eliminate a little bit of that grit for the sake of making it, I guess, kid-friendly or whatever, like, I understand the rationale behind, okay, we're not going to cut the Greedo scene because it's iconic. At that point, it was iconic.
Yeah, I understand the rationale behind it. I just don't agree.
You just don't agree with it.
I understand why he did it. I understand, you know what I mean?
Well, when I saw it the first time, it made me think, was Greedo a stormtrooper? Because he missed from... I mean, what the hell?
So let me ask this then, and this is just kind of moving on from the Han shot discussion. What is your favorite scene in A New Hope?
Favorite in the whole...
I'm going to ask you two this too, so cue up your answers.
We get to think about it.
Oh, man, that's tough. I would say probably my favorite scene if I'm, it's tough. I don't know. I'm gonna give you a couple real quick. I'd say maybe my favorite scene, just because it's so iconic, is the Binary Sunset, where he's on the dune looking at the thing, and it plays the solo French horn, and then everything comes up, and it's just I cannot watch that scene to this day without the hair on my back of my neck standing up. It's just such a brilliant. It's like everything's working together. Everything, the sum of it's greater than the sum of its parts. It transcends all the pieces. It's a transcendent piece of cinema.
Man, I think for me, when Luke sees Darth take down Obi-Wan, I think that's probably my favorite scene. And it's because you get to feel that reaction from Luke in response to that, coupled with the moment before of Obi-Wan realizing that Luke's watching and he's about to sacrifice himself here and I've got several different reasons for that, and part of it is because as an actor that really spoke to me in the movie at a young age, of seeing that reaction of loss that Luke had. Because up to this point, he lost his aunt and uncle and that stuff, and he's moved on. But
he didn't really seem to give a shit about us.
Right.
He's like, I'm out. I want to be a Jedi. I'm gone. Let's go.
Classic Star
get the hell out of
Wars.
here. No more farming.
And they were brutally killed.
That was actually shocking. Their skeletons were all burned and smoking.
Yeah.
Right. But you get to actually see that feeling in him with Obi-Wan, and see the impact that Obi-Wan had on him in this short amount of time that he's been with him. And I think that's one thing that really kind of spoke to me.
That's very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody count that scene as like being a super impactful scene for them. I just, when I think about my own memories of that scene, I was just, again, as a kid when I watched it the first time, completely perplexed as to what happened because like he just disappeared and just like
Now and after that, I went back and
I was like, whoop,
I was like, why didn't everybody disappear when they're getting
yeah,
the
exactly.
lightsaber,
I was like,
of
he
course.
could do that? I thought he teleported, you know?
I kind of got the vibe. I was like, he's not gone.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's holding all. I was like, Obi-Wan is holding all the cards.
I didn't
in
think
that
he was
scene,
dead.
you know?
I just thought he teleported
Yeah.
somewhere.
But I think that moment also makes your moment more stronger. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
when-
yeah.
Sure, because that's the first time he
because
comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
the Force is badass.
Yeah.
And that, but yeah, that was the one for me.
Cool.
You guys sort of did two things I was thinking off of. Just the Binary Sun, just the music, everything, just that shot.
Yeah.
It's just, I'll go back to that moment when we talk about a later movie. Like, that'll be later on in this thing. But yeah, the Binary Sunset. And then my other thing I always think about is prepping right up to the Obi-Wan and Vader fight, the end of it, whenever Luke comes up and says, Ben, in question, he gets chopped down, and it's that shock of him dead. But then on top of that, you hear, the first time he hears this voice as like a Force ghost.
Run,
go,
Luke, run.
Run, Luke,
Yeah.
run.
Yeah,
Like, you're like,
that's
then you're
right.
thinking, holy shit.
It was
and
immediate.
then that carries on to they escape. Luke's all sad. Leia's trying to, be nice to him, and you think and then all of a sudden Han runs and goes, "We're not out of the clear," and they have that great, almost World War II, jet the fight with the under the gunner thing. So yeah, that whole
That was a
10
great
minutes,
sequence.
the
That's a
whole
really
10 minutes
great
from that
sequence.
moment, from the unfortunate Obi-Wan sacrifice, to them, getting those TIE fighters. That's probably one of my favorites.
I guess maybe for me, if I had to really think about it, and it's really hard for me on this one because I don't know if I can classify any particular scene as a favorite. There are scenes that stick out in my head, and I guess I could call them favorites, but I think I attach so much nostalgia to them because they're my first memories of these things. But I was a huge fan of Indiana Jones. Like when Luke swung on the thing with Leia in the Death Star, I probably almost broke my neck trying to reproduce that
really?
moment. Like between that and Indiana Jones, I probably should be dead literally from trying to recreate these things. But I like that, the entire sequence when they had to escape the Death Star in general, from the trash compactors and the joking when Han was talking over the intercom, he's everything's fine here, everything's fine here.
This conversation was going nowhere anyway, and he blows up the thing. I always thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
That's one of my favorite moments, I think, in that particular one. But also, I do have a real fondness for how the sequence that led up to the Death Star exploding. I love the music as the torpedoes turn in, and then you the close up on Peter Cushing's face, and then
series of edits,
it's a great series of cuts before that explosion. And the explosion, especially the special edition explosion, was just fucking awesome. I love everything that leads
the video
up to that
switcher
sequence.
level goes down.
Exactly. That to me is probably my favorite sequence in A New Hope. And it leads to the ending, which I loved as a kid, the whole celebration, the medal ceremony, and that piece of music that plays over that is still my favorite
Dun,
piece.
dun, dun.
Yeah, that dun 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 dun. That is my favorite piece in all of the Star Wars soundtrack history. And the medal ceremony is awesome. It actually it ended in such a weird way for me as a kid because it seemed super sudden. They blew up the Death Star and they got a medal, and then credits.
Hey, man.
And I was like, wait, well, so they just
Funny that you asked. You asked what my first memory is. I do remember seeing the medal ceremony for the first time.
Yeah.
Being concerned about R2-D2, and then it cuts over and they're both gleaming. And I was like,
both
yeah,
gleaming.
they got it all
Yeah.
figured out. This is great. You know what I mean?
So let's talk about Empire now. Leading out, so the A New Hope ended with that medal ceremony, right? And as a kid, that made sense to me, kind of a abrupt ending. I kind of wanted to see what else happened to him afterwards, but I got that was the end of that movie. When I watched Empire, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I was like, wait a second, I thought this had ended. I saw the thing blow up, and I thought Darth Vader died, but later it turned out I realized he just spun off into space. But I thought that the whole thing was over. So when the next one showed up and they're still fighting AT-ATs and all this sort of shit, I was like, this is wildly confusing. But I think as I watched that movie as a kid, I didn't have an appreciation for what it was the way that I gained it watching it, when I was a little bit older. So I just want to get your thoughts. What are your guys'? I know it's your favorite movie. What are your opinions?
Oh, the Empire is a masterpiece. I mean, Empire is it's freaking awesome. I mean, when I was a kid,
You like how dark it is.
well, it's not even about it as being dark. Empire has just everything's more amazing than the first movie. I mean, it doesn't have the structure's different. The first one, A New Hope, has kind of the
Who directed this one?
Irvin Kershner.
Irvin Kershner.
So and he's more of an actor's director when you see that, in with the actors, and it's just more. It's more cinematic. There's just amazing.
What's
stuff.
your favorite moment from this one?
Oh, well, there's so many. One of my favorites right now that I'm actually grooving on is when Han turns around. So, he keeps trying to get the hyperdrive to come on, and it just can't get it fixed. And eventually he's like, it's not fair. It's not fair. And everyone's screaming at him. He's like, okay, hold on, I got an idea. And he turns the Millennium Falcon around, and he starts going right at the Star Destroyer. And they're like, he's coming into attack position. They're like, shields up, and he comes right over the deck. He disappears. And they're like, where'd he go? What, Yeah. And then it cut, just they talk, and the guy has to go tell Vader that he lost him. And I think maybe Vader kills him, right? Because he kills like several admirals in a row and promotes the next guy. Yeah. And then there's a scene where he's stuck on the back of the of the thing, and he's sitting there and they're being real quiet, and then he's like, release the clamps. And they're going to dump their trash before they go to hyperspace, and we'll just float away.
Like the rest of the garbage.
Yeah, and that's what she said.
Yes.
She says, like the rest of the garbage.
Yes.
It's a great. This is the first movie that Lawrence Kasdan wrote. Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan wrote, but you get that Kasdan dialogue. Yeah. And she says, like the rest of the garbage. And then they detach, and then everything's floating away. That jumps to hyperspace, and then as they're kind of the garbage is floating by, you realize the music starts, and it's Han and Leia's theme. Da 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 da. And it's like he's winning her over. He's looking awesome. He's doing awesome ass cool Han Solo shit. And then, she tells him, she's like, I gotta say, you've got your moments, and they fucking take off. It's a great moment, Anyway.
Well, I think what I like most about Empire is it's kind of a overall shift from the first one. Empire Strikes Back. It is much darker, but it also it's much more real. We got this kind of fairy tale start to this story, and now we're seeing consequences. We're seeing introducing new characters. As far as the favorite scenes in that for me, tail ending off of the garbage, seeing the Slave One, hit up.
Somehow he knew.
He knew.
Now I'm not sure how they get to the planet first.
Right.
Considering that, Yeah, it's like, how do they get there first and quick enough to where they've already made a deal and everything's set up, and, what I'm saying? Considering that there's no way for Boba Fett to even know where he's going until he gets pretty close. So he would have had to, get pretty close. Boba Fett's like, I think he's going to Bespin. And then they immediately bring the fleet there, everyone there. They talk to Lando. Again, who gives a shit? They
just got there. They did it. They're the Empire.
Exactly. They figured it out.
I was such a Boba Fett just nut.
Yeah, me too.
When he, that I think that's probably the one of my favorite parts is introducing
the
Boba
introduction
Fett. When they go through the bounty hunters, when you see Snaggletooth and all
this,
and then
Snaggletooth was in the cantina. He was.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But then they come to Boba Fett, and it's like as a kid, this guy's a badass.
Especially back when he had the Clint Eastwood voice. Before he had the Aussie voice, and he was like,
was that a special edition change?
Yeah, after
they softened his voice up?
It wasn't even the special edition. It was whenever they had the New Zealand actor for the prequels.
Yeah.
It was it was I guess it was the DVD versions, like the first DVD ones.
So they wanted to match him up with
Toni Morrison, I think is the guy.
Yeah.
Toni Morrison's an author.
Tony
Memora or something like that. That's the guy's name.
Yeah, so that didn't happen until I think the DVDs actually came out, post Attack of the Clones, I think.
Okay.
And he's still trying to do the voice, but it's an Aussie actor. It's just not. There's not the same level of menace when it's like, he's no good to me, dead. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have the. Original. It was straight Witcher 3 original. Yeah. He was like, he's no good to me, dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Total badass.
Yeah.
And that's what that's probably my
Which is
favorite
funny
memory
because
of
you
Empire.
actually showed me a picture of the dude without his helmet
Oh,
on. And he looks
yeah,
like
Jeremy Bullock is it?
I
Something like
think so.
that.
The
actual
Yeah,
physical
yeah,
actor
yeah.
now.
It's like,
He looks
his-
like a
see,
total
he's
dweeb.
leaning up against like the girl singers from Jedi, like with this
Yeah, and his little
Yeah.
cut out on his
Oh, yeah.
his headpiece and stuff. But yeah, I mean, everything about Boba Fett in that movie just got me excited. But just the movie as a whole, I mean, of course, I agree with you 100%. It's just a masterpiece. Just everything that it takes us along in this journey was awesome. But for me, it was that darkness. It was that I'm not in Kansas anymore. It's not this fairy tale thing. We don't end with everything hunky dory.
It's the polar opposite of
Yeah.
New
Well,
Hope.
as a
Yeah.
kid, I didn't like the ending. It was scary to me.
Kelly, what is
I've got to just go with the fight at the end, the saber fight. It's just the moment like Luke's Luke's kind of walks into the room and you hear that Vader voice of like, you're not a Jedi yet. And like the blades just light up.
Yeah.
And it's just like, then you hear the breathing from Vader. It's just, and the funny thing is, didn't they always, in the first fight, was basically looking like two old men, just doing like this? Because didn't they always say, didn't they get described to in 77 or 76, they're making it, that they were supposed to, didn't Mark Hamill say they're supposed to pretend they're really heavy? I think I always heard like something like that. But then you get to like Empire and they're like moving around a little faster and everything.
Lucas had a rule that you have to have two hands on it at all times.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be wielded with one hand, really, because it was based on Kenpo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was and that's
Okay,
what they
yeah.
always,
Sword fighting.
yeah.
Yeah, so just that, I mean,
There's a
just
lot
that
of
whole
samurai influences.
Yeah, just that whole like fight is just great, and then leading up to the obvious, the big spoiler like moment, but that's great. But then just also just a quick throwback. We're talking about, I said how the binary sun part is like the great music moment for that one for me. I think Yoda raising the X-wing, that is the major music moment of that one.
Yeah.
That, and then I guess I also always remember the music being so intense whenever Han's being dropped, comes out of the carbonite. That's just, that music's some of my favorite stuff from that
Of course,
one.
the I love you, I know line is
Han, great.
Yeah,
I mean, Harrison, great.
super amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess favorite moment in Empire. Man, I don't know. Like, I think maybe for me, when I was a kid, like I liked the confrontation between Luke and Darth Vader, and that whole conversation, and then the I am your father and all of that. And it's pretty cool because like a few years ago, there was like a series of videos that went viral of like parents our general age range showing that to their kids, and like the kids like freaking out about it or whatnot. And like I didn't have like a freak out moment as a kid because like I didn't quite, because I was a really dumb kid, people, and I'm still not that sharp, but like it took me a long time to really connect all of those things
plot
together.
threads.
Yeah, so like I knew that it was like a big moment. I didn't quite get how big a moment it was until like a little bit later. But but it was still like he gets his hand cut off, and I was like, man, he's just getting his ass kicked. Like, what's happening? This guy he blew up a Death Star. Like now he can't fucking wield a sword. Like what's happening?
Dude, he's fighting Darth Vader.
Yeah, he's fighting Darth Vader, but like I didn't. It was like also the first sense that I got that Darth Vader was a fucking threat.
Well, that's
like
the first time you saw the good guys lose,
Right.
probably maybe in any movie ever.
Yeah.
Because the good guys get their asses handed to them in that movie.
Because like I didn't really care that much about like Han Solo, and I don't mean that as like I didn't like him as a character or anything like that. It just wasn't a character that really connected with me. Like to me, I was the typical kid that always liked the hero, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know, I always liked Han Solo. I don't
yeah,
know.
well, I liked Luke, so I was following his thread more closely than anybody else's. So when Han got frozen in the carbonite, I didn't really see that as a oh my god sort of thing. I was like, oh, he'll be saved, And I just like I intrinsically
Funny how
knew.
close he came to not being saved.
Yeah, I just kind of intrinsically knew that Luke was going to be the hero that was going to save the day, right? But then you watch him get his ass handed to him, and it's like, what is happening? Like, I do want to ask each of you, who is your favorite character then of the Star Wars original trilogy?
Han Solo.
Han Solo?
I even though I love Boba Fett, I mean Luke was always my favorite.
Luke was
I
always
kinda
your
with
favorite?
you. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna go with Luke too.
Luke, and Han Solo.
Yeah.
And then I think for me, I would probably also say Luke. Like, which is interesting because I would have assumed Han Solo would have been, Han or Boba would have been a runaway answer. But
Boba, I don't think Boba's anyone's favorite character. It wasn't like Boba was my favorite character.
I think he's a lot of people's favorite.
I
not
thought
much
it was
of a
just
character.
Yeah,
I mean,
I liked him as a kid. I was like, oh, I have this. He's cool, but I just never thought of him as an actual favorite.
yeah, he looks awesome. He's a cool
It was the
figure
look,
to have, or
yeah.
a cool mask. or
I had the
awesome
sticker
to
on my
have.
car, sort of thing. Yeah.
When we used to play as kids, I never got to play Han or Luke.
Yeah.
So I would always choose. It was either Boba Fett or Chewbacca, and I not that I had a hair problem, obviously, when I was a kid, but I just loved playing Boba Fett and trying to be the bad guy when we did that. But still from the trilogy as a whole, I mean, Luke's arc, I think for me is just it's just more interesting for me than.
Well, Luke is the main character.
Sure.
But I don't know why. I just thought Han Solo was cool. Like Luke was,
that's understandable.
Han Solo was.
He was written to be a cool guy.
Was awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He was written to be cool, and Harrison Ford portrayed him very coolly.
Yeah.
So,
He had the
mission accomplished.
He had the sideburns.
He had the Millennium Falcon. It was
Yeah.
his ship. He made it
Yeah.
himself. In fact, my first car that I had in high school was this like old Volvo that was gray and like the oxidizing paint, but it was turbocharged. So it was actually really fast. And all my friends, we would refer to it as the Millennium Falcon because it looked like a hunk of junk, but could actually beat a lot of cars off the line at a red light because it was turbocharged.
Nice.
And it overheated all the time. And, it was
a crap
pretty much
car.
exactly
Right,
like
it was the
the
Millennium
Millennium
Falcon.
Falcon.
All right, cool. So yeah, Luke was mine. Just like I said before, I always had a through line with the main heroes of those kinds of stories. So I liked his arc. I liked how he was. I liked how he started off just being like he was a kid, right? And he was living out his kid fantasies of being in the rebellion and being the hero and whatnot. And eventually he got brought down to earth and had to like mature and become a little bit more of a hero. Like when he shows up in Return of the Jedi, he's like, that was the thing that really stuck with me about Return of the Jedi, is that when Luke makes his first appearance, there was this like air about him, like,
Yeah.
I know exactly what I'm doing. Like I know I'm not really threatened by any of this, and like all of this is going according to plan. And like I was really mystified by that because the last time I saw Luke, he was not
not in good
doing
shape.
well.
Yeah, but it's a classic like D&D entrance. And he had
No,
a
it
cloak
is.
on, and he comes
I didn't play
in.
D&D at that
You know what I
time,
mean?
so this was a new thing for
The
me.
orcs are there with their axes, and he's
Yeah.
just like, he's like a wizard from Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he shows up, and Jabba's like, he's like, I'll give you a chance, but then you're gonna die. And Jabba's like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But at the
Should've
same
listened to
time,
him.
that jump from Empire to that, it kind of makes you, sit up in your seat. You're like, oh, okay. So where are we going now? With,
So
Jedi?
Return of the Jedi takes place like 6 months after.
Oh, I think it's 3 years.
couple
actually.
years.
I thought because I read
Because he goes and
somewhere-
trains for a while. Luke finishes, or pretty much finishes.
I read somewhere that Han was only frozen in carbonite for like 6 months.
Oh, well, who knows? I don't.
The YouTube channel Mr. Sunday Movies actually did a thing over the Shadows of the Empire, which
Yeah.
was that whole multimedia project that was supposed to fill in the time between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi that had all sorts of crazy crap happen in it. And in a fit of brilliance, I would say, Disney and Lucas just decanonized all of that
The only thing
I
I'll say,
agree.
that's where I learned how. The only thing that book taught me how a lightsaber was made.
Oh, really?
That's actually the only Star Wars full book I actually read.
Oh, okay.
I think I was intrigued. I bought into the whole premise
Yeah.
that this is the major book in between the two movies.
Yeah.
And I remember like the part about Luke building the new lightsaber with the kyber crystal, and I just remember that.
Okay, cool. So, like, Return of the Jedi, I have a huge fondness for this movie. It might be my favorite of the original trilogy. I'm not sure, but I'm not as hung up about, like, a lot of people. Whenever I talk to them about Return of the Jedi, they like it, but then they hate the Ewoks and all that sort of stuff. I have no hang-ups on the Ewoks at all. I thought they're fine. I thought their inclusion made sense to me. All the main beats.
He was an Ewok for Halloween one year.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Oh, awesome. So I would be down for that. But if I was an Ewok, they would have just called me Chewbacca. So that was never going to work out
Even
for me.
then?
Oh, I was always the tallest. But yeah, I liked a lot of things about Return, probably more than I liked the other two. I loved the intro of Luke in Jabba's hideout. I love that whole sequence where they're on the ship by the Sarlacc pit, and they're giving each other secret symbols, and then all of a sudden the action just explodes, and all of that's cool and ends with that explosion, and then they split off into space. And Luke goes back to Dagobah. I loved the scene of Yoda when he passes on. Like when I was a kid, that stuck with me. Like that affected me. Watching him disappear, like that was unsettling. Like I had seen Obi disappear and whatnot, and that was just confusing. But watching Yoda just like and then disappear, I was like, whew. It's like Luke was just alone all of a sudden, and like. But
alone on Dagobah.
Alone on Dagobah.
I mean, like, geez.
Yeah, like not a friendly, cuddly place to be alone at. But a lot of those things really stuck with me. So I think I consider that movie like probably my favorite of the original trilogy. Where does it stack up with you guys?
I mean, for me, it's it's my least favorite out of the trilogy.
Oh, your least favorite.
Yeah, but it was for me it was more the. I felt like I don't know that Luke was an adult now, and there wasn't much of a growth in it, for him in that one. It's but that's not saying that I hated the Jedi at all. I mean, the trilogy, all three of them are amazing.
Well, the growth wasn't quite so much about Luke in that one. It was really Vader who had the arc.
Yeah. And for me, I was one of the guys that didn't really care about the Ewoks and that kind of stuff. And for me, it was especially the Ewoks and Leia and that stuff. It just I was a 9-10-year-old little kid that was like that's lame.
Yeah.
That's girls and their teddy bears.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my thing. But on the flip side of that, Leia as a slave. for a 10-year-old, was probably my favorite scene.
Okay.
In there.
This is where having a girl on the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Kelly?
It's my least, but once again, it's no disrespect. I've actually used Return of the Jedi as a reason for the band. I was trying to tell someone for the band Jet to Brazil, which is my ranking. I was like, Four Car Knight's my least favorite, but it's like Jedi for me. That's not so I've used Jedi in that reason that it's no disrespect. It just happens to be third.
It's the worst of the best.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like I'm not going to say worst. I'm just going to say third. I'm not. I just don't. Yeah.
I think maybe because like it's the conventions of his story kind of returns to what A New Hope's through line was. Like it's more of a hero, kind of like a hero's quest, and less of like the more realistic, downtrodden story elements of the second one. Like, and it's I guess maybe it's a little bit less character driven than Empire may have been. It's more about like the bigger plot beats of like going up against the rebellion, against the Empire, and then there's the battle at Endor and the space station stuff. Like, I can understand the compulsion to rank it beneath the others. But in my view, like I just think it did what the others did in a more fun way. Maybe not necessarily better, but it was just more fun to watch.
I mean, there's three major battles going on at once. There's space one, the
and
saber fight,
the
and then
I loved how all of the shit that was happening.
The space battle was really cool.
The space battle was
that's
cool,
the best
and I liked
one.
how all the stuff that was happening with it's a trap and all of that. And then the Emperor is sitting there watching, and he's like, "You see, your friends are blah blah blah." And he's using that to like lure Luke over into the dark side. So there's like this thing going, but it was also playing on what's happening on Endor because they got to drop that shield. Like they can't drop that shield, then Akbar and his boys and Lando, they're gonna die. And Luke's watching that and he's getting turned, and then they get the shield, and then the tables are turned, and all that sort of stuff just kind of plays in a loop. And all of that was just super, super fun to watch for me. Like, I was more intrigued by the interplay of those three sections than I was for anything that I had seen in the prior two movies. Like, it just seemed cooler to me, and especially when it ends, like all of that crescendos into, and then like Luke is like, father, and then like, Vader is looking back and forth, and then he picks him up and throws him off. Like, all of that, like that, it felt like a big, huge buildup to like I didn't really know what to expect of Vader up until that point. Like I knew that the heroes were gonna win, right? Like I just knew that was gonna happen. But I didn't know that it was gonna happen because Vader was gonna be the one to strike the killing blow against the Emperor. Right. So that was like a huge twist that I wasn't foreseeing when when I first watched it. So all of that in concert like means more to me than anything I had watched in the prior Star Wars. So that's probably why I rank it above the other ones. Like it was just, I think in total, it just worked a lot better to a lot stronger effect.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Bob. No, I mean, when I saw it, I loved it. I saw it when I was 6 years old, and in the summer in the movie theater. It was the first Star Wars movie I'd seen in the theater, and I thought it was just the most amazing thing ever. But I mean, in retrospect, when I look back at them now through the lens of being an adult, I prefer Empire and New Hope over it. And the Ewoks I loved. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I thought I didn't have a problem with it at all as a kid. I was 6 years old. I was like, they're cute. This is happening. Great. They're taking out the Empire. Oh, remember when they crushed the thing? That was cool. And
So you mentioned this was the first one you saw in theaters.
Yeah.
I think the first Star Wars I saw in theaters was The Phantom Menace.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those now. Yeah, I remember the trailer. I saw the trailer
I got
in
trailer
front of
story.
Wing Commander.
You saw Wing Commander?
I went to the theater to see
Yeah,
Wing
I did
Commander
too. I
because
paid for it just for that.
I did not know that there was a. This is the grave sin on my
Oh,
part.
you went to
I
see
did not
Wing
know there was a
I went to go see
Star
the
Wars
trailer.
in front of Wing Commander. I went to see Wing Commander to see Wing Commander.
Oh, see, yeah, my story was I have relatives in Louisiana. We were visiting Louisiana. My mom, I'm still 7. Yeah, I was still in high school.
Yeah.
So and obviously in
I
Louisiana.
thought you were about to say you
I'm
were
still
7
7.
years
No,
old.
no.
I'm still
I was gonna
7.
be like,
I didn't
well,
have a
how old are you, dude?
I didn't have a car, so obviously I wasn't gonna. So I remember I sat down for the Wing Commander movie. It was a packed theater too, and I kept thinking,
Prinze.
all right, I'll get up when everyone else does, and then I'll call my mom. I told her I may not stay for the whole thing, and then the trailer ended, and I was like, and no one else got up. Went, I guess I'm watching Wing Commander, and I sat there for that whole movie.
It's a brutal movie to sit through.
Yeah.
Believe me. But the trailer.
Harbinger of what we would get.
Harbinger of things to come. I'll say this, and maybe this is an indictment enough of the movie from my view. I don't remember a single thing about my experience of watching Phantom Menace in the theater. I must have just Men in Black mind wiped it as soon as I stepped out because I don't remember anything about it. I watched Phantom Menace when it first came out on DVD, however many months later. And I really sat down and watched it, and I remember watching that. But I don't remember anything about my theater experience, which is funny because when I talk to people who are big Star Wars fans, they were waiting for it, and they went and they camped out in lines and whatnot.
Yeah.
I always hear it's almost like a 9/11 for them. I'll never forget where I was when I walked out of that theater.
I have such a ingrained memory of that being the first movie that I sat through the credits.
Really?
And it's because at the end of that, I was so fucking mad. I was so pissed off that I just sat there it was the first show that I sat there the whole time through the credits just
Wow.
going, what did I just watch?
Well, let me ask you all this question then. Hindsight being what it is, and it's been 20 years since Phantom Menace, is that movie as bad as everyone says it is?
It is as bad, and it's not as bad as Attack of the Clones.
I agree wholeheartedly on that one. But I might disagree on that first point. I don't think it's as bad as everyone says it is. That doesn't mean I think it's good, but when I went back and rewatched it, because I just rewatched it again a few weeks ago. As soon as Disney Plus dropped, I just started popping things on, and I did pop on Phantom Menace because I hadn't watched it since 2001 or 2002 or whatever it was first on DVD. So it's been a while. I watched it pretty much with fresh eyes at that point, and I was expecting it to be brutal because of just a decade plus of people just really railing on it. And it really wasn't. It wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't a good movie. It was just a movie. It was just this is just some stuff happening, and maybe in the context of what people expect from a Star Wars movie, that's a death sentence enough. But
I think that's probably part of it.
I think
that's a big
of
part.
it.
I think
is a
that
big
my
part of it.
expectations were so set so
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
with the first trilogy. And, a part of that, my life at that point when I went and saw the movie, I was in college. I had been acting. I had acted with kids before. And I went there and sat there and said, how many kids did they audition to play Anakin? And how in the hell did they settle on this kid? That was the biggest thing for me, and it's so awful being a dad now, and thinking that I had
especially
such
knowing what
mire.
happened to
This
that
kid
guy.
sucks.
Oh, right. But I mean,
Yeah.
having so much mire for this little kid.
Yeah.
But I watched it again a couple of weeks ago when we got Disney Plus, and
Yeah.
I was working at home and had the TV on in the background, flipped it on and put on Phantom Menace, and I couldn't get through a half an hour of it. It was just so
Interesting.
It just brought back those memories of
I'm the
just
same
all
way.
bad.
So it's just a latent trauma.
It is, yeah.
Phantom Menace is a weird movie, and you can't. When you saw it with that, when I watched it, I was like, it's weird. It's like Star Wars, but it's not. It's like fake Star Wars, and it was like it was like a weird facsimile of Star Wars. Like they're on a spaceship.
Lucas was trying to expand the universe for certain with that movie. Like it was less about like scrappy rebels and like some mysterious government or whatever.
I think
And
it's
was
about
definitely-
taxation.
It was. I mean, the crawl started off about a trade blockade.
It
And,
wasn't really. That wasn't the thing that took me out of it, though. I mean,
Well-
it wasn't an engrossing storyline for sure.
Well, what I was getting at is you were saying that it was like Star Wars, but not quite Star Wars. Well, let me like, what makes Star Wars for you then? Like,
Well, I mean, just in coming off the original trilogy, you know what I mean, and the way the world, as alien as it was, felt very tactile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It felt real. You
Yeah.
know, and when we criticized some of the changes they made in the special edition, it was criticizing things that pulled with the verisimilitude and took you out of the movie, right? So in this movie, just right from the very get-go, I mean, I'm watching it, and it's like, okay, they're on a spaceship, and I get that it's a different spaceship. And honestly, I'll give them this: those round spaceships with the ball in the middle, those things looked really cool. They were models, and those were cool. But it's just like the guys were talking, and their mouths, the sync was so off right off the bat. I was like.
So it was just the technical, like
Well,
just the way that it looked, the way that it sounded,
that was
like
a
the
big
technical
part of
aspect
it.
of
And the
it.
story was like one of those things. Like the story wasn't that engrossing from a get-go, but even from the very beginning, the chip started to think. So I was like, it doesn't really feel like this is completely real. This feels like almost like a fan film. I didn't know that terminology then, but where it's like everything generally is there, but it's a little off.
Yeah.
They haven't the attention to detail.
Well, and I was so excited when I heard that it was going to be about, that it was going to have a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that Ewan McGregor was in it,
Well, I mean,
and all
he
this
was
stuff.
the best thing about it.
And then, when it starts and you see, Qui-Gon, and I'm like, okay, well, I thought Yoda taught Obi-Wan, and that's when all these inconsistencies started from the very beginning, because I had those expectations of what continuation of those characters we're going to see, and there was other aspects of it, like this was a prequel, and it was older than Star Wars, but it seemed like technology was far more advanced.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of that has to do with the CGI and
And it was on
the
purpose to
storytelling.
some degree. It was a cleaner, more world before war and the turn
Right.
of the Empire.
But at the time, that it just kind of slapped me across the face when I was watching it.
Yeah.
It just didn't get me the same way that the trilogy.
The spaceships didn't look real.
Yeah.
To me, like the big models did, but like all the cruisers and stuff, all the things, there was obviously CGI. And after all the, like seeing the special editions and being like, it didn't look really, I didn't really like the editions they made special because they didn't really feel as real as the stuff they had in there.
So,
and it just seemed like a backslide.
I
It was
will
like, you guys
say-
had this on lock.
Yeah.
I will say that, Phantom Menace looks a lot better than Attack of the Clones. Like, watching the two back to back, like, I've noticed a dramatic decrease in,
Because
like,
a lot of Phantom Menace was still on some sort of location or
they
set.
use,
Yes.
they use set
And
pieces
They
more.
went
in
to-
that
Attack was
one.
pretty much
Tunisia.
full blue.
Yeah,
like,
like, and
And I think-
it shows.
I think Attack is actually the first one they did completely digitally too.
Yeah, it shows.
And they did, I think, Phantom. And so-
I asked this with the original trilogy, so let me ask you with this: who are your favorite characters?
I
from
think
the
it's gonna be a
prequels?
sweep. I'm going Obi-Wan.
Oh,
Yeah.
I knew this
Hands
was
down.
Yeah,
It's
Obi-Wan.
part Ewan because I knew who he was from like Train Spy and stuff, but it's also just he's the best one.
All right,
in that.
excluding Obi-Wan, who is your favorite character from the?
There are no other favorite characters.
I think that the
No love
prequel
for Darth Maul, no
the
love
prequel
for
trilogies
Yeah.
for me, they suffer from
Count Dooku?
some of the worst casting in cinema history.
Casting.
I think, and it's for me, it's Anakin. It's Jake Lloyd when he was the boy. I thought it was a horrible casting decision, and I think Hayden Christensen as the older Anakin was just awful. It just continued.
He's definitely. I'm not going to say the guy's a bad actor because he's been in other stuff and he's been he's been good.
I've seen him in great stuff.
And it could have been the dialogue, could have been the direction.
I think the well-known great Natalie Portman doesn't look good in times.
I know that's the thing we were talking about that last night. Like, Natalie Portman is an amazing actress,
and even Ewan McGregor
laughably bad.
Even Ewan McGregor has a moment. He killed younglings. He even has like a moment where like it's like, is it George just telling these people to do this?
I mean, again. They needed to cast more British people in these movies with dialogue that bad, you know what I mean? That clunky and stuff. Yeah. They needed that Vaseline on the lens of British people saying the lines. Yeah. Because there's a reason that Obi-Wan.
Like the Star Wars universe, though, the guy shows up with a British accent, you're probably gonna get shoved into an oven. Like those dudes are. A British accent in the Star Wars world is always bad news. So they need to merge that together so they could mix it up with the accents.
I'll say this. You mentioned Count Dooku.
I love Christopher Lee so much.
I did like Christopher Lee.
I give him a pass on anything.
I'm right there with you. I love Christopher Lee.
I guess Darth Sidious was good. He was good, and doing his thing. Yeah. All the guys with British accents were good. You know what I mean? Right. I'm not. I mean, the thing is the movies were. I mean, especially Attack of the Clones is just such a brutal failure. Yeah. I mean, and it's just you go from the reality of a feeling like you're on Hoth in 1980 to that last scene where he's like, "Begone the Clone Wars." It's a fucking cartoon. It's like that movie. The movies were unbelievably serious. You know what I mean? Yeah. They didn't have Kasdan's wit. There was not any of that, there was not any of that, I was born here, you're going to die here, There wasn't like any of the wit you get from like Han Solo in the first trilogy. It was replaced. All humor in that movie was slapstick, extremely silly humor. Exactly. So you took this kind of witty banter that we were expecting and it had become part of Star Wars's identity, and you just kind of scoop it out with an ice cream scoop and you replace it with like Jar Jar stepping in poop.
So trashing these movies is pretty much a cottage industry on its own. But let me ask, what are your favorite moments from these movies? What do you like? What do the prequels
I will tell
do
you my favorite moments from these movies. The best moment in the prequels by a long shot is when Obi-Wan tells Anakin as he's burning to death, he's like, "You're the chosen one." That's a great part. Yeah. I'm sorry, he does it great. He's like, "You were my brother, Anakin." It was great, And of course, it's then he's like, "I hate you." Yeah, I mean, but that's a good part. And there are cool things. Some of the ship designs were cool. Like some of the really shiny ships, even though they didn't really look that real, they were cool designs. I just wish they could have been a little bit more realistic looking.
Once again, I'm going. I guess the Duel of the Fates with Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor. It's one of the only standouts from the first movie. Yeah. Second movie, I'm trying to even think about.
I don't think it had any standouts.
Because even that fight with Dooku wasn't even that. Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I don't know if the second one has anything that stands out for me. I'm struggling to even remember any part of it. I guess anything that Samuel Jackson showed up in, I guess probably was a highlight of that one.
He comes in, he goes like, "This party is over." He says something like that.
That's what he said.
When he shows, I just rewatched those. The other
highlight
day.
of the movie. We'll put that on.
I just rewatched those for the. I just watched Attack of the Clones for the first time since I tried watching it a second time. Like in a discount cinema, and that's I didn't get to say it. I think I tricked myself into thinking Phantom Menace was greater. I just wanted to love it. Because I remember talking to Dad. Me and my dad were like, it's the first of the trilogy. You could tell we were trying really hard, right? Yeah. And I didn't even admit to hating Phantom that much. Then Attack of the Clones came out, and I guess when I saw that one for the first time in theater, I guess I was excited. I mean, I was just like, But then me and my friend, we went and saw Attack of the Clones. The thing, we nearly empty theater at a discount one. And I just remember us groaning, going, this is unbearable. And I had not watched it until a few days ago since that moment.
I saw it in Mann's Chinese Theater.
Wow.
And we had played a show at the Knitting Factory, and we finished the show, and when the guys in the band, our friend, we all went to Mann's Chinese, loaded, our gear was still over at Knitting Factory, we all went, because it's right next door. And I was like, they're gonna pull this out. This is the second one. Phantom Menace was a misstep, but this doesn't have the kid in it. It's gonna be better. And within the first 5 minutes of that movie, it looked terrible. Yeah. Especially in digital projection, it looked like VHS. It looked like a cut scene from a Star Wars video game from the CD-ROM days when they'd go to the full motion video green screen. It looked like that, and I was like, no, man. This is it. It's never going to get any better, than this. This is a failure, and we just started laughing. We were just making fun of it.
That's
and
how
joking.
it came for me and my wife. We were so excited to see the first one. We were so let down that then it kind of became a running joke with us. Let's go see how bad this can really get.
Yeah.
And
I want to see the
we
slow
did,
motion car crash.
and I think we did it. I think we did enjoy it with that. With that being our level of expectation. But
did you have any what are your favorite moments then
from all three of them? One of the things I was saying about the toys before, they put the toys out before the movie, and we got to see Darth Maul and some of that stuff, and I was like, this seems like it could be pretty cool. I think Darth Maul and the double lightsaber and the fight between Qui-Gon and all that, I think that's probably my favorite. Okay. Out of all three of them, and it was just that
was actually the first time I saw a lightsaber fight that looked like what I always thought a lightsaber fight should look like.
Yeah,
I was never really impressed with I was impressed with lightsabers in the original trilogy, but the fights and the choreography always looked lacking. It was never really anything special. With that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul, and they're spinning around, everything's twirling and whatnot, It was before it was overdone. It was before it was overblown even.
Yeah.
Because eventually, and especially in the Star Wars video game universe, everything is slow motion and spinning and flipping, and it looks like Power Rangers.
Yeah, I like the more medieval style fighting of the original trilogy.
I like choreography. I like really good choreography.
Yeah. That's what I could appreciate in that fight. It was a skill.
As someone who grew up watching kung fu movies and shit, I like watching a fight that is put together in a way that makes sense, that has a lot of really cool acrobatics, and that has me on the edge of my seat almost, trying to see how one move's gonna connect to another. And I think that was the first Star Wars movie that gave me that with the lightsaber fight. Yeah. So at that moment I was like, oh, okay, lightsabers are cool. Now I know why that Star Wars kid was doing that in the AV room at his high school or whatever.
But I think part of that fight was one of my favorite things in A New Hope was Luke seeing that happen to Obi-Wan. And now Obi-Wan sees that happen to Qui-Gon, and I think that is probably one of the only things in the film that tied back emotionally to me.
I got you.
As a spectator, seeing that.
Interesting. All right, so I think we sussed out our feelings for the prequels here.
But you had a point. You want to make a point. We don't want to yuck anyone's yum.
No, if you love these movies, I never want to talk shit about anything someone loves. If you more power to you.
And it's still Star
definitely.
Wars, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's what I was saying.
that's the thing.
By the time I went to watch it, the Revenge of the Sith, I had no expectations. They were literally in the toilet, and I just remember going in and being like, "Yeah, man, what's going to happen? I don't even care. Let's see some Star Wars."
We talked to
and
people.
I enjoyed it in that context.
Yeah, we talked to people right after the film, that loved it, and we hated it, but there wasn't any animosity. It wasn't like, "Fuck you, you're wrong."
Yeah.
It was, we're all Star Wars fans.
There's a lot of that floating around.
Yeah,
on the
it's still
internet.
Star Wars. There's still lightsabers
you,
and
you're
spaceships and guys in fucking Mandalorian
I wish I loved
helmets.
everything. It's like I don't know why people want to get so angry automatically about it.
It's okay to dislike something, and people need to be okay with it.
It's okay to dislike things you like.
Yeah.
To be like, I like this, but I'm not really into that, but I still like, on the whole, I'm into
it's
this.
okay if you dislike something I like, or if I dislike something you like. Right. So that's really the crux of this, and because Star Wars is something that has lasted, throughout generations. There are people who were kids when the originals came out, people who were kids when the prequels came out, people who are kids when this new trilogy has come out. That those opinions are going to be, much more varied than if they'd all come out within the same, 10-year time span.
Because it's baked into, it's enjoyable for kids. I mean,
it's made for kids,
and so it bakes that into your psyche,
and
like
in fact,
your Star Wars.
That's actually what what George Lucas told J.J. Abrams when he started working on The Force Awakens. If we get into the new trilogy here, he said to him, "Remember that your primary audience is kids. They're the ones that are going to be watching this and grading this and coming up with it. So keep them as your core demographic in mind." And Abrams took that to heart when he did The Force Awakens, which, I didn't have a great deal of expectation for it when it was initially announced. I like J.J. Abrams, so I thought he was going to do a good job. But as someone, again, who kind of boils a little lower on Star Wars in general and didn't really like any of the trilogy movies except for the last 20 minutes of Revenge of the Sith, I didn't really have an expectation until they dropped that first trailer. And when they dropped that first trailer for Force Awakens, I was 1,000% on board.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one of the first videos we actually did on this channel was a reaction to that Force Awakens trailer. When we start with Kelly, like what was your take on the Force Awakens when that one finally dropped?
Do you mean when I sat there in the theater?
In the theaters, yeah.
I got that feeling.
You said you were burnt when Clone Wars.
Yeah, I skipped Clone Wars altogether because I was just the prequels. I was still just meh. But so many years later, when this was getting made, I started getting excited again.
So
and just with that Lucasfilm logo comes up in a long time ago, and when the Star Wars thing popped up, I remember sitting in my theater going like, holy shit, this is happening again. Yeah. And I don't remember I'm sure I had that feeling in '99 too, but I was just like, oh my God. And then when the movie just starts and it has this real feel again, like the original ones, like you could tell they're running off of a real set, like of a ship.
Yeah.
It was like, and the movie just looks gorgeous the way it's shot.
Yeah.
It's just,
Force Awakens is a beautiful movie.
Oh yeah. That's exactly. I mean, it was that spark that I had the first time. It was and it's so magical because it was instant. It was instant when the movie started. I could tell that it wasn't gonna be the.
Yeah, I know.
I felt so redeemed.
Man, you're all like beat puppies. You're just like, we're so
Dude,
glad.
you don't understand what it was like, man.
He was raising his hand, but it turned out he was petting me behind the ears. It's like, man, I didn't realize you guys had such a traumatic experience.
It's just the aesthetics of those original movies are something that it can be perceived, but almost as a feeling. And they recaptured the feeling, and you could perceive it very quickly in the movie that it was back, and it was like, holy shit, I remember this. Yes, fucking yeah. And you know what? Maybe it was member berries. Maybe it was like, hey, remember this? It's fucking awesome. I was like, yeah, you know what? It was fucking awesome, and I do remember that. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
When I first saw that in the theaters, I went on the opening night, and it was an interesting experience because like everybody in the theater was dressed up in full Star Wars attire. I wasn't. I had the attire, honestly, like, which is funny.
I don't.
Which is funny. I worked for a company that made a Star Wars game for 6 years, so I just naturally accrued all this stuff. Like, I had it. I didn't deck myself out, but like I was just surrounded by this whole I went to see a movie, and I quickly realized that I was participating in an event. You know? And then like the Star Wars logo comes up and the music's playing and then there's a scroll, and Luke Skywalker has disappeared and all that sort of stuff. And then, it starts off with I forget how it starts exactly. But it starts off, I think, with the First Order coming down.
Yeah, Poe's trying to get the piece.
Poe's in that village and
this
whatnot.
will begin to make things right.
Right. And like when that happened, like when the stormtroopers came off of that ship, and they're just causing chaos in that village, and like things are exploding and all of that. That was when I was like, oh, okay, this looks like it's going to be a movie, like a closer, this is something that I'm actually gonna be. So like I didn't have an expectation one way or the other when it started, but as soon as that scene ended, like as soon as he stops the bolt in midair, and they take Poe, and then like as they walk off screen, the bolt continues and hits that thing, and like Finn's freaking out, and like that whole sequence was like, I am in. Like I am on board for all of this.
Man, for me, when I started seeing Finn,
question
just
things.
starting questioning that, I was like, this is different, but it's the same.
A stormtrooper questioning all of the shit that's happening.
Yeah, up to now they've just been scenery. They've just been this, but now we're going to get to experience another side of Star Wars that we didn't really get an introduction to before, and it felt new and fresh. But
I loved all the characters. I thought the casting was great. I thought Rey was awesome. Finn was awesome. Poe was awesome. I mean, Kylo Ren was awesome.
I mean, Max von Sydow.
See, oh
Yeah.
yes.
Beginning,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just from the beginning, like first 10 minutes,
Yeah.
it's like, it's awesome. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
and I'm a big fan of his. I thought he was great in Snow Falling on Cedars and all the Ingmar Bergman stuff. But it was just like, dude, this movie is killing it. And it was just, I mean, if I had to criticize the movie, the only, it kind of, to me, when they kind of go on the weird thing with the Rathtars on, with Han
They got to have a
Solo,
monster in every movie, though.
I guess.
One of the biggest, to that point, one of the biggest criticisms that Force Awakens gets is that it's just a retelling of A New Hope. It brings you home because it's just copy paste from the new first movie, right? That's like one of the big criticisms for it.
It's kind of like a greatest hits of the original trilogy. It's
Yeah.
got elements from all three of those movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely like pointing back to the original trilogy and pointing at those aesthetics and bringing some of those similar story beats, but not exactly, but they're similar. There's similarities there. But I mean, it's like you could make a similar argument to some degree for even the prequels that, it's like, Anakin lives on Tatooine. He's a boy. He turns out he's got this great destiny. And, it's not exactly the same, but there are some similar themes. Now, granted, all the trade stuff, no one saw that coming. But, but I mean, some paths shouldn't have been gone down. But, it was just, that was not a problem. To me, I enjoyed it immensely. I liked being back in that specific, feel of the Star Wars universe, and I think it did so much right. It was great, snappy dialogue. He had Lawrence Kasdan back working on the script.
Yeah.
Those moments
I think
with
that made
Han.
all the difference.
Oh man, those moments with Han. I knew that it had the script, the dialogue vibe of old school Star Wars when he brings Kylo Ren in front of, and it's Poe, and he's like, "So who talks first? You talk first."
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. The wit is back. You know what I mean? And then I immediately knew what kind of character Poe was. He's kind of like your Han type character.
Poe has started both movies joking. So it's
to that end, let's talk about The Last Jedi because you say that Force Awakens brings back all of the familiar tropes and whatnot, and like the familiar Star Wars setting and all of that. But A Last Jedi, what Rian Johnson did was he took all of that and basically just turned it on its head.
Yeah.
And the reaction from the Star Wars fandom was not.
I heard that I forget who wrote the second one, but Rian Johnson didn't watch the first one, or the writer didn't watch the J.J. Abrams when he started writing it.
So he read the script.
He'd read the script,
Yeah.
but he didn't watch the film, and he didn't get to experience what that first one was. And I think that's the real disconnection, I think, between the two, and it comes across. And but it's still a good film for me, And for me, the Last Jedi, it has both of those two movies have the two most poignant spots for me in the entire films. Is the death of Han Solo. Is the first time in the entire series that I cried as an adult when that happened, and it was just so real. But then it, back to what Kevin Smith was talking about for The Last Jedi is, when Luke sees R2 again.
Yes.
That moment
I gotta
just
say,
makes
I
the
got a little
entire series for
misty
me.
because
It's
he says R2 in the same way he said in the original
Exactly,
movie. It's
exactly.
just like he says it exactly the same way, and it just kind of, you just like all those years just kind of melt off for a second. And even and especially in the context of where his character is at that time, and it's like, I don't know, I'm older now, you know what I mean? America is in the shitter, you know what I mean? There was this moment where it was like, and then R2 of course plays the original thing. And I was that was a standout
That was
moment
definitely
in the
some
last
saccharine
Jedi.
heartstrings.
They were, but whatever, man. You know what I mean? It's like,
It was just such a good moment. But the style, the differences between the two, and J.J. Abrams' direction versus Ron Johnson's it's there, but it didn't bother me. I don't have the mire for the second one that some people do. It doesn't
A lot
bother
of
me.
people, and it's funny because the three of us say we were fans of Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And like a lot of people who have animosity towards that movie don't like the direction that they took Luke Skywalker in that movie, which is funny because I actually loved the direction they took with
Yeah,
Skywalker in that
I don't
movie.
see how they could have taken
like
it
it.
in
I
any
thought
other
it made
direction.
perfect
Really,
sense.
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah.
I thought it made perfect sense for the character. I thought it made perfect sense for the world that they were living in. Like as he struggles to try to live out the legacy of the Jedi and comes to terms with his own failings with regards to how he handles the dark side and how he tried to cut himself off and all this other sort of stuff. It made perfect sense to me that character that I watched, who was borderline a petulant kid who became a little bit of a full of himself Jedi, who was still like, not like he wasn't arrogant or anything, but he had a little bit of that air in return, like, oh, I've got this, when maybe he didn't necessarily always have it. But like, it made perfect sense to me that character would evolve into someone who is like a little bit more cynical or a little bit more gruff and a little bit less eager to try to, step out and be the hero, given what his experience with trying to rebuild the Jedi led to. Like, it all made perfect sense to me. So I never really understood why there was such an intense backlash against his character.
Well, and it was such a playful thing also that started it. I mean, they end The Force Awakens with this, here's your lightsaber.
Yeah.
This moment that you're just like, that is so fucking iconic.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. But then they start the next one with him taking it and tossing it over his shoulder.
Which is literally symbolic of Ryan Johnson saying, fuck all what you thought.
Exactly. That's
Well,
the way that I kind of took it.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that like I think at first it's a bummer because you don't want him to do that. Like, if you, as a viewer, you don't really want him to do that.
Right.
But if you think about it, the last time you see Luke Skywalker with a lightsaber, he does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He takes his lightsaber in Return of the Jedi and he throws it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, I will not do it. I will not turn.
After he struggled with the dark side and almost obliterated Darth Vader and chopped his arm off, dude's hanging on to like a rail, like, oh, feeble. And that's when he's like,
Well, it's a theme in Star Wars that, just like his father, how did Palpatine get Anakin to follow the dark side? He dangled someone that he loved and cared about. And Yoda warns him, you shouldn't care about people too much, which hilariously is, that's the Jedi is a bit lost in the woods in that regard. But it's Luke's same thing, where when Luke is sitting there and he's trying not to fight Darth Vader, and Vader's trying to goad him, and Vader's like, well, you have a sister. Your thoughts have betrayed her as well. If you won't turn to the dark side, maybe she will. And Luke fucking loses it.
Yeah.
He's like, ah! He comes after him and he beats the crap out of him, cuts his hand off, and then sees the hand, and he's pulled out of it, and he's like, no, I'm not doing this. It's very similar in The Last Jedi to when he feels that there's darkness in Ben. He sees a vision when he goes in his mind of horrible things that Ben will do, people he would kill, and all the terrible things he does. And at that moment, he's just like, lights his lightsaber. But then he realize it's Luke. I mean, it's fucking Luke's
literally
character.
Luke.
You know what I mean? And then of course Ben sees him, and then a whole thing melts down from there, which builds Luke's shame. But then it ties back to that. It was a vision that caused Anakin to fall to the dark side. Yeah. Anakin had a vision of Padme dying, and so it rhymes. I mean, it makes so much sense with the total arc of the story that I just don't understand and people are like, Luke would never do that. He believed Darth Vader had killed children, and he didn't, and he wanted to save him. It's like, you don't understand. He wanted to save him, but he had a moment when Vader threatened his sister that he went nuts on him, just like he wanted to help Ben, but then he had a moment when he saw all the horrible things Ben would do where he lit his lightsaber up, but it passed.
And there was one interview that I saw with Mark Hamill talking about, when he was filming The Last Jedi, how he had to get to that as an actor. He had to create a different backstory than Luke to be able to get there as an actor. And what he came up with was this time gap that he married a widow who had a child, and the child died from his lightsaber. And that was like part of the way that he had to get to a dark place in the last in the Last Jedi to kind of take Luke there
to where he needed
to get to, as an actor. And I always thought that was really interesting that, we all live through through Luke's story, and we all see this, but the actor himself
is living through a completely different
having
story.
to live through a different story to get that story across to us. It's just so interesting.
Let me ask you, Kelly. Between which one do you prefer, Last Jedi or Force Awakens?
I've gone back to Last Jedi more. I think
but there was a moment when wait, you've gone back to which one? I'm sorry.
No, I'm Last Jedi.
You're back to Last. Okay, so you've bounced back and
well,
forth.
okay. I think when I walked out of Last Jedi, I'm like, I think I liked that pretty good. But I think the more I watched it, I have appreciated it more and more.
Yeah.
More and more time. And this is something I viewed in the first viewing. And I talked earlier about the binary sunset moment from A New Hope. Just when you think about Luke's last scene in Last Jedi was him looking at that, it clicked in my brain of when it happens in the first movie, it's his last moment of peace before he's thrown into this war of decades of all this stuff. Yeah. And it's this last moment he has of peace before he just goes. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think I still have Force Awakens above The Last Jedi. There's a big chunk of the middle of The Last Jedi that I don't really care for. That whole weird casino fiasco.
Well, that kind of goes into my main criticism of The Last Jedi.
And like there are some character things, like I think that I feel like The Last Jedi took a little bit of a step back as far as how I felt about the main characters, Rey, Finn, Poe. They kind of went he took it in a weird direction, I think, with trying to accentuate so strongly Poe's brash behavior in a way I thought was like, it was so extreme and almost kind of took me away from it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I was like, and then like with in that same regard, like I thought that maybe not in that same regard, but like counter to that, I thought that obviously the meat of the character development was between Rey and Kylo Ren. Like, that was what the movie was about.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think that actually The Last Jedi is a great movie about Luke, Rey, and Kylo Ren.
Yes.
Yeah. I think if you cut out every other stuff in The Last Jedi, and it was just she goes to the planet, they do their thing.
Which bums me out because I really loved Finn in the first movie.
He did kind of get put aside.
Yeah, he got like the short stick in this one, I thought.
No, I think you're right.
So I thought that really bummed me out.
One of the things I do love, it's funny, like you could tell as you're watching Last Jedi, you're wondering, are they gonna copy Vader's redemption story for Kylo? It's like I was like, I don't want that. But the moment whenever he slices Snoke, from that shot of Rey catching the saber, when it cuts from that, and from them, I'm still at that moment going, I don't want him to be redeemed. But when they go like back to back, and I'm like, screw that, let's go, let's do that. But then right when it was over, I love that. Right when it was over, it went back to no, he's not. He's gonna fight the other way.
For a second.
No, I know.
But
for those like 2 minutes, I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm all for it now for what he just did.
There are moments in The Last Jedi that might be some of the best moments in all of Star Wars. That scene particularly, because for the first time, and I was going to say this when we were talking about Return of the Jedi, I'll mention it. I never really understood, even as a kid, and even as why Palpatine or Vader thought that Luke was ever going to turn to the dark side. I mean, what were they really offering him? I mean, it was like, we're going to kill your friends. It's like, yeah, but you're going to do that anyway. Like, it's like, he's like, you're going to join me. He's like, why would I? I'll never join. I walked in here as a good guy. What are you offering me exactly? You get to be Darth Vader. It's like, well, he's a fucking robot in a mask. I mean, as a kid, I never really understood what exactly is Palpatine offering him. I don't, he's like, with every moment you become more my servant. I was like, I get that he's playing head games with him, but I just don't really see. I just never really thought that was ever going to happen. I'm like, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. However, in that moment in Last Jedi, you know what I mean? When he's talking to Rey and he's like, let's just blow this shit off. Just the Jedi, the Sith, let's just tear it all down, man. We don't need any of this crap. You know what I mean? Why don't you and you get together? I thought, well, that's a fucking offer.
That's an offer. Like,
you know
that
what
makes
I mean?
sense.
Yeah, I mean, she's never had anyone, and he said, you don't mean anything. And it was very, harkened back to kind of abusive boyfriend shit.
He was definitely negging her.
Yeah, there was some real shit in that, But you don't mean anything to this story or to anybody, but to me you do. Come on, and she's never really had. I was like, dude, now this is a play. This is some meaty fucking shit right here.
Yeah.
And that was really great. I mean, when they killed Snoke, I was like, they just fucking killed Snoke.
Yeah.
What? I mean, those really great, crazy moments. But then there's Canto Bight. There's the whole, like, it's a parking violation. Jedi, you know, and there's DJ just in jail.
A complete waste of Benicio del Toro, I feel.
Yeah.
Which bummed me out because I love Benicio del Toro and I was waiting for him in that movie.
And his character has some moments.
And his character has some
when he's
moments.
like, you know, you're going to regret this or whatever. And he's like, maybe. Which supposedly he improvised. You know what I mean? He was like, you know. But again, that is my biggest criticism of The Last Jedi, is that it is, in a lot of ways, it's Rian Johnson's kind of criticism, in my opinion, of Star Wars as a thing, as a fandom, as a concept in this day and age. And it's like he read he read the script to, you know, The Force Awakens, and his reaction wasn't unlike a lot of people's. That was like, this is really mired in the past. This is just, you know, reanimating the corpse of the original trilogy, and that's just that you're not going to get anything new, anything amazing. Let's move forward.
So then, do you think that the backlash to The Last Jedi was, I don't know what the right word is, warranted, justified, understandable? I would say it is. But what about, like, do you think it was warranted?
Well, it depends on what you mean by backlash, because we're talking about two different things. People that say, I don't like The Last Jedi, I think it was kind of crappy, you know what I mean? And it's like, word, you know, I get that, you know, I understand where you're coming from. That's one thing. People that are like, The Last Jedi is a cinematic piece of crap, and Kathleen Kennedy is a feminist piece of crap, and they made Luke into a lame, whiny bitch so that Rey could be the feminist hero that, you know, the social justice warriors wants. That's a huge vocal part of the anti-Last Jedi industrial complex that has come up since that movie. And those guys need to get into therapy. You know what I mean?
I honestly don't even register that as backlash, to be honest. Like, I think that there's legitimate backlash. I think there is a contingent of people who would see the development of Luke as being a problem, who would see Rian Johnson's philosophy of killing the past to move forward as a problem.
Well, see, I don't really think that was his thesis. I think because I think Kylo says that.
Well, he says it, but
Rey rejects it in the end.
But it doesn't matter if she rejects it in the end, because it was the driving plot point for the entire movie. Like, all of the things that all of the symbolism behind.
No, you're right.
Destroying
he breaks the mask, throws the lightsaber,
destroying the tree with all the books or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. Like, all of that played into the idea of and it was a quote that J.J. Abrams had when they were talking to him about his feelings of The Last Jedi. Like, it came off as, this doesn't matter.
Well, he's right. I agree with JJ completely. Okay, in that the movie's meta vibe. There was a meta vibe where we're not really. It's not shit happening to people in the world of Star Wars completely. I mean, that's happening too, but we're also making this other comment about Star Wars and that's such a visceral part of the Last Jedi experience that, to me, that starts to run anathema to what Star Wars has been, the some of the basic connective tissue of Star Wars. It's never been this weird meta. That's never been a part of Star Wars, and it starts to fall apart in some ways when that kind of comes to the forefront. I mean, like, I was always like, why is a parking violation? Why would they park their ship on the beach and that becomes the whole? It must have been going to jail and the whole thing falling apart. A parking violation is like such what? And then I was watching Spaceballs. And that's what happens in Spaceballs. It was literally a Spaceballs reference in The Last Jedi. And I guess he probably thought that was really funny, just like the stuff with the steam, which I thought was funny too in the moment, but I can get people were like, come on, man. You take it a little bit. It's like when you're playing D&D with a character and he names his character Ice Cube. There's a player who's like, my character's name is Ice Cube. And like, okay, we can have jokes, but let's get a certain degree of like seriousness with regards of, and I can see people having that issue with it.
Final thoughts. Let's wrap this up. We went through most of the movies. Rise of Skywalker is yet to come out. That's going to be this Friday, I believe. This coming Friday. I know you've got your tickets for that Friday night.
Thursday.
You got for Thursday night. Mine's for Sunday, so don't spoil anything for me. You
Mine
got your
is
tickets?
Friday morning at 6:30 a.m.
6:30.
I got night. Yeah.
I couldn't get Thursday in time.
Damn.
It was a fight, but I got
And you still don't have tickets.
I don't have tickets because I don't plan for the future. I'm sick of that planning crap. Planners have been ruining things for me. I'm Han Solo, man.
For the closing remarks in this, I want to ask a question, and I feel like the answer should be obvious, But the reason why it's maybe a little fuzzy for me is because of all of the shit this dude has gotten over the years. What exactly is the legacy of George Lucas? Like, he's obviously created this franchise that is far and above, like, more influential than most other franchises I can think of outside of, like, the Bible, basically.
That's a franchise.
Which is a franchise.
Passion of the Christ.
Any of those Charlton Heston movies or whatever. You know, like, he's created this massive thing, but he gets way more shit, I feel, than he gets, like, any sort of credit or esteem for whatever his involvement is. And I guess it's because, you know, of the prequels, more so than anything else. But is it justified? Is it warranted?
I don't actually think I think these days he's quite lionized. You
think so?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, a lot of the Star Wars, you know, fandom, YouTube stuff, it's very, very just like George Lucas is the creator. They call him the creator, you know what I mean? I think he got some shit during the prequels and the years after that with the, you know, George Lucas raped my childhood and then you know, all that stuff.
South Park thing.
Yeah. Wow. But I mean, you know, I think George Lucas is a brilliant creator, world builder guy who gave us this, and I can't, you know, it's literally defined a large aspect of my life. I can't thank him enough. But I do think the original trilogy was also really the original trilogy was really collaborative in ways that the prequel trilogy wasn't. I mean, there was Gary Kurtz, there was his wife, you know what I mean, who had a role in, you know, in editing the first movie and building, you know, a lot of the stuff. And I think that sometimes some of those people get left out of the creation myth of Star Wars because, you know, we like in America it's a great man society. You know, it's like we like to have a chief. You know what I mean? This guy is the guy who did it, and George Lucas is the guy who did it. But there are other people that played a huge role. But yeah, I think his legacy is fairly intact. I think it's pretty positive.
I agree. I think that you know, now that he's kind of passed the baton, I mean, there's no animosity for me because of that same reason.
He passed the baton in exchange for a large
sum of money. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, the role that he played in my life by, you know, creating this when I was a kid, and you know, I can't ever fault him for anything he's done. Even the prequels.
I can't fault him for it. He did the best he could. He took a swing, man. You know, it's like I just didn't like it. That's just me. You know?
Yeah, and you know, I look forward to the next step and all the next steps. You know, I mean, I think with Disney, the one thing that I liked about that was that it kind of is, it's going to prolong this for future generations. I don't think it's going to die anytime quick. I don't think that the Rise of Skywalker is going to be the end. I mean, obviously,
for certain, it's not going to be the end. But I mean, it is the end of the Skywalker saga.
I think so, yeah. And it's, you know, but I look forward to whatever comes next. I think I'm excited about it.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'll just say thank you, George. Yeah, I've got nothing. Like, because every other movie series, every TV show, every band, there's always been something I haven't absolutely loved by them, and I can just think about the prequels. Yeah, I can just think they're not for me, but I still have the original ones. That's the thing. Like, even with this is the same thing with like remakes. The remakes never hurt your love for the original movie. That's why they're always there to go back on, sort of a thing. So that's why I always have those original movies to watch. And he's brought this legacy that's continuing now. And we get these new sets of movies I've loved, all of them. So yeah.
And I guess and I guess my response to that would be that, you know, there's, because of the weight of the Star Wars franchise and its influence and its breadth, like, there's really nothing that he can do at this point that's going to eliminate the good that series has done. Nothing. Maybe if he just axe murdered a bunch of people, I had to probably put a little bit of a blemish. But he'd be the axe murderer that made Star Wars. You know, so
I would still love Star Wars. I'm not gonna. You know, it's like, you can't cancel Star Wars.
OJ killed a couple people, but he rushed for 2,000 yards in a single season. You know,
you had to go there.
That's a Chappelle bit. That's a Chappelle bit. But yeah, so like I'm glad that if he is being lionized, I'm happy for that. I think there was a big stretch of time where he got a real bad rap.
Yeah, which was not cool.
Which wasn't cool.
Because he was. I mean, you can't fault a person that's doing their best, making the thing they want to make.
Right.
You can only fault someone that's just kind of phoning it in or not. But that's not the case.
Right.
The guy did. And you know,
he committed to it. I mean, he never came back and said, "Yeah, you're right. The prequels were shit." He committed to. He said, "This is what I put out," and
And it's still
he
Star
owns it.
Wars.
It's for you, yeah.
Star Wars,
And it's still
spaceships
Star
and
Wars.
lightsabers, and I'd rather watch that. I'd rather watch the worst part of Attack of the Clones than a whole bunch of other movies that, you know what I mean? And so.
Well, hopefully in a couple of days we won't have to sit through the worst parts of Attack of the Clones. Rise of Skywalker is going to close out the Skywalker Saga. It's been how many years now? 30 some
40,
odd, 40
yeah.
some odd.
Yeah.
Whew, that's an epic. But it's coming to a close. We're all going to go see it. He will eventually. And we're definitely going to have a review for you when that one comes out. So come back. Ray, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me,
This was a lot of
guys.
fun. Went on very long. The sun was out when this started. So sorry to Brandon and his poor cameras. But thank you, Brandon,
Yes,
for,
thank you.
for hosting this awesome set, all your cool equipment. You definitely noticed this looks a hell of a lot better than our other stuff. Brandon's the reason why. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. If you love this video, or even if you like it just a little bit, like, subscribe, share, do all of that stuff, and join us next time. See you later.
Bye.